All right. Happy Wednesday, Pack Elementary, Pack Indians, whoever is watching. Today is Wednesday, and as you probably realized, I missed yesterday. So I'm going to do two read alouds today. The first one is from one of my favorite books, and I know I've said it before, but one of my favorite books, Charlotte's Web. I'm going to read the first chapter. Chapter 1, Before Breakfast. "Where's Papa going with that axe?" said Fern to her mother as they were setting the table for breakfast. "Out to the hog house," replied Mrs. Arable. "Some pigs were born last night." "I don't see why he needs an axe," continued Fern, who was only 8. "Well," said her mother, "one of the pigs is a runt. It's very small and weak, and it will never amount to anything. So your father has decided to do away with it." "Do away with it?" shrieked Fern. "You mean kill it, just because it's smaller than the others?" Mrs. Arable put a pitcher of cream on the table. "Don't yell, Fern," she said. "Your father is right. The pig would probably die anyway." Fern pushed a chair out of the way and ran outdoors. The grass was wet and smelled, and the earth smelled of springtime. Fern's sneakers were sopping by the time she caught up with her father. "Please don't kill it," she sobbed. "It's unfair." Mr. Arable stopped walking. "Fern," he said gently, "you will have to learn to control yourself." "Control myself?" yelled Fern. "This is a matter of life and death, and you talk about controlling myself?" Tears ran down her cheeks, and she took hold of the axe and tried to pull it out of her father's hand. "Fern," said Mr. Arable, "I know more about raising a litter of pigs than you do. A weakling makes trouble. Now run along." "But it's unfair," cried Fern. "The pig couldn't help being born small, could it? If I had been very small at birth, would you have killed me?" Mr. Arable smiled. "Certainly not," he said, looking down at his daughter with love. "But this is different. A little girl is one thing, a little runty pig is another." "I see no difference," replied Fern, still hanging on to the axe. "This is the most terrible case of injustice I have ever heard of." A queer look came over John Arable's face. He seemed almost ready to cry himself. "All right," he said, "you go back to the house and I will bring the runt when I come in. I'll let you start it on a bottle like a baby. Then you'll see what trouble a pig can be." When Mr. Arable returned to the house half an hour later, he carried a carton under his arm. Fern was upstairs changing her sneakers. The kitchen table was set for breakfast, and the room smelled of coffee, bacon, damp plaster, and wood smoke from the stove. "Put it on her chair," said Mrs. Arable. Mr. Arable set the carton down at Fern's place. Then he walked to the sink and washed his hands and dried them on the roller towel. Fern came slowly down the stairs. Her eyes were red from crying. As she approached her chair, the carton wobbled, and there was a scratching noise. Fern looked at her father. Then she lifted the lid of the carton. There, inside, looking up at her, was the newborn pig. It was a white one. That morning light shone through its ears, turning them pink. "He's yours," said Mr. Arable, "saved from an untimely death. And may the good Lord forgive me for this foolishness." Fern couldn't take her eyes off the tiny pig. "Oh," she whispered. "Oh, look at him. He's absolutely perfect." She closed the carton carefully. First, she kissed her father. Then she kissed her mother. Then she opened the lid again, lifted the pig out, and held it against her cheek. At that very moment, her brother Avery came into the room. Avery was 10. He was heavily armed, an air rifle in one hand, a wooden dagger in the other. "What's that?" he demanded. "What's Fern got?" "She's got a guest for breakfast," said Mrs. Arable. "Wash your hands and face, Avery." "Let's see it," said Avery, setting his gun down. "You call that miserable thing a pig? That's a fine specimen of a pig. It's no bigger than a white rat." "Wash up and eat your breakfast, Avery," said his mother. "The school bus will be along in a half an hour." "Can I have a pig too, Pop?" asked Avery. "No, I only distribute pigs to early risers," said Mr. Arable. Fern was up at daylight trying to rid the world of injustice. As a result, she now has a pig, a small one, To be sure, but nevertheless the pig. It just shows what can happen if a person gets out of bed promptly. Let's eat. But Fern couldn't eat until her pig had had a drink of milk. Mrs. Arable found a baby's nursing bottle and a rubber nipple. She poured warm milk into the bottle, fitted the nipple over top, and handed it to Fern. Give him his breakfast. A minute later, Fern was seated on the floor in the corner of the kitchen with her infant between her knees, teaching it to suck from the bottle. The pig, although tiny, had a good appetite and caught on quickly. The school bus honked from the road. Run! Commanded Mrs. Arable, taking the pig from Fern and slipping a donut into her hand. Avery grabbed his gun and another donut. The children ran out onto the road and climbed into the bus. Fern took no notice of the others in the bus. She just sat and stared out the window, thinking what a blissful world it was and how lucky she was to have an entire charge of a pig. By the time the bus reached school, Fern had named her pet, selecting the most beautiful name she could think of. Its name is Wilbur, she whispered to herself. And she was still thinking about the pig when the teacher said, Fern, what is the capital of Pennsylvania? Wilbur, replied Fern dreamily. The pupils giggled and Fern blushed. So that was the first chapter from Charlotte's Web. Our next book, because it is the end of the school year, is Because You Are My Teacher. If we had a schooner, we would have class at sea and study the Atlantic where the great blue whales roam free. Make sure you guys can see it. If we had some camels, we would trek through desert lands to see the ancient pyramids rising from the sands. If we had a chopper, we could soar above the cone of a rumbling volcano as it churns out liquid stone. If we had sleek ski gear, we could cross Antarctic fields to spot where penguin chicks are eating their first meals. If we had a river raft, we would tour the Amazon and listen as the howler monkey growls their spooky song. If we had hot air balloons, we would set out on a quest to study China's Great Wall from the east end to the west. If we had a submarine, we would see amazing sights in the deepest, darkest ocean where the fish make their own light. If we had an off-road truck, we would ride savanna trails where African young elephants hold on to mother's tail. If we had swift kayaks, we could plunge through twists and falls, exploring the Grand Canyon where the river carves the walls. If we had hang gliders, we would get a bird's eye view of the Australian outback and the large red kangaroo. If we had an airboat, we would roam the Everglades where alligators stalk their prey and lizards change their shades. If we had a gondola, we could glide beneath the stars in Venice where the people ride in boats instead of cars. If we had a rocket, we would study Earth from space. With 7 sprawling continents, our home is quite a place. Our classroom is our vessel, always headed someplace new. Because you are our teacher, we'll explore the world with you. All right, that book is Because You Are My Teacher. I figured, why not read that? Because it's the end of the year, we're winding down. So we have 2 more read alouds left of the school year. I Hopefully tomorrow morning we'll get tomorrow's done. We do have our elementary track meet tomorrow for our 3rd through 6th graders, starting at 8:30. So hopefully tomorrow morning, like I said, I can get here and get it done before I head out to the field. So have a great Wednesday, and I will see you all tomorrow. Peace.